Okay, so today I wanted to talk about an anime I started watching. It's called yeah, the Eminence in Shadow. I kind of watched it on a whim. It had a somewhat interesting plot, and I was kind of just wanting to find some things to watch and go through it. It wasn't anything very thoughtful from there. I have been basically going through. It's not officially, but it's basically an isekai. Isekai, for folks who aren't familiar, basically just means you basically become a character in an MMO RPG. Something like World of Warcraft, Final Fantasy 14, EverQuest, kind of whatever, fill in the blank from there. And basically, it's an idea. Well, I'll go into depth kind of what it does and why people start off with that. But usually, what they'll do is they'll start off in the real world, and what they'll have some sort of nobody character, real world character who's just a regular guy. Regular guy who then something happens, and the something that happens could either be death, trauma, magic something, portal, or in just an actual video game. Like for example, we'll go through some of the examples with them. So like solo leveling is I would actually consider an isekai, even though it's kind of based in the real world, real with quotes, we'll say. Because essentially it does everything an isekai does. It's just you're in the regular world, and there's portals from that open up to monsters coming in from other worlds to it. So it's basically kind of acts. It is kind of different because it's the real world plus monsters, and then he does a pretty good job of kind of blending the two. But that's just kind of what it is. There's Overlord, which is really just in a video game. And I'm kind of curious if the series is ever going to address that, or if it's just going to continue and never look back, which is not surprising. So this one is one where basically the main character starts off in the real world. And he is what I would call an overpowered main character, or at least in terms of a very powerful main character. So just to kind of give some contrast, usually what you'll have is you'll have like Naruto, or One Piece, or sorry, Luffy. And what they'll do is they'll kind of start off. We'll draw us a graph here. They'll kind of start off here, which is weak, basically. So we've got strength, and then time over here, basically, or a plot, basically. So what we're doing is we're starting at the beginning, and we're starting off very weak. And usually what they do is they go up here, training arcs. You know, this would be, you know, for Naruto, it's Shadow Clone or Rasengan. For Luffy, it's like first gear. Up here, we've got Luffy learning Haki. And up here, we've got, Naruto, he's got his Sage mode, basically. Something like that, where you can see there's this definite progression. But the idea is that you start off here. He's barely able to do anything. So you do have this sense of progression. With this series, basically the MC, I think his name is Sid the whole time. I'm really bad with names. I just learn faces and it's, hey, you, that face. But we're going to call him Sid. He's at least in the video game fantasy world, he becomes Sid. So he'll be Sid. Let's see. Yeah. So, he basically starts off, you know, already overpowered, basically. So what does that mean, and how does that take place? Because when I say, oh, he comes in as overpowered, basically that's something that the author has created and communicated to the audience. So the question is, how does he do that? So the way he does it is basically goes through is you have, usually what you can do it is there's in contrast to other characters, which is a good way to do it. So there's contrast in this way, and this is the real world, so there's a few obvious metrics which we can measure how powerful, how influential the character is. We have social status, physical strength, any extra skills, and then smart. Oops, let me get in here. Smart. Kind of these are different metrics, and basically what it is, the way we check this one is there's super popular rich girl who likes him. You know, in their dynamic, he continually gets her name wrong and all this, and it's very obvious, kind of this thing where she's kind of playing to his tune. Physical strength, we find out later that he is pretending to be the stylish thug. I can't actually remember, the stylish thug destroyer or something like that. Basically thug killer. We'll call him that. I can't remember the exact name for it. Stylish thug killer. So basically what he does, he's a vigilante and goes around killing or fighting. Actually, I don't know if he necessarily kills them. Mute my computer sounds. Fighting bad guys. Fighting bad guys. And skill, he's very skilled at fighting. Basically, he somehow is trained a lot so he can fight, and he's smart. He knows how to fight. And he picks the right situations, basically. This one's kind of we'll add that in there too. But basically these all kind of overlap to some degree, but you get the idea in terms of if you got these things nailed, you're obviously someone who's kind of a contender, basically. So he's got all this stuff, and the first ways we're kind of introduced to him doing all this is basically that the main girl, or the rich girl, likes him, and she's kind of like, ooh, he's mysterious, and he's kind of aloof. This is the other thing that comes into play. He's aloof. And what this does is essentially what you have here is basically you have all normal things. The normal track, we'll call it the normal track of life, basically. And this is school, grades, what people think about you, teachers, future, kind of the normal things that normal people care about. And basically when he's being aloof, he's showing that he is above it all, basically, which can very easily turn obnoxious, but luckily in this one he seems to do an okay job of just kind of seeing like he's in his own little world. He's too focused on the grind. Too focused on the grind and getting better to do that. So that kind of achieves the same point. So this is how the character, he's introduced. We have this interaction with the main girl. We see that he's continually training. So he's kind of focused on his own thing. He's playing to his own tune. And this is kind of what you realize when you get older, is that most of the things as a kid, in a sense, don't matter. In some sense, they definitely do, because they do shape how you are, and you can't just stop caring as a kid. But in an anime or a manga or something where you can just switch on the lights and create a character, that's not quite your average high schooler. You can make them care about something different. You can kind of set them on a different track. So, a kid who's trying to figure out how to survive and a kid who's trying to figure out in school, both of these things are very important, but there's different levels. That said, you can't say to the kid who's in school that it's not important, simply because it determines the future of your life and determines, maybe your family, maybe your parents beat you if you don't get grades. Like, there's all this kind of stuff where it's like, it obviously is very important. There's ways you can manipulate it as a story writer to make it more and more less important. So kind of continuing on from here, basically for the plot is the super rich popular girl, Serbga, gets kidnapped, and then the MC goes and saves her. And basically what this does is kind of formally establish the OP, overpowered, basically, and kind of sets up this almost like a mystery dynamic between the two of them, because I think she may be getting a little bit suspicious, or at least I assumed it was going to go this direction until it changed suddenly. A little bit sus about what's going on. You know, this kid in the high school who seems to be so different and aloof. He's so aloof and mysterious, different from all the others. Is playing into effect, and basically then as a main character too, it's also a lot of the story is told from the girl's perspective, basically. So we've got her point of view, which I think I've talked in some of my other ones, where anytime you have the main character and it's told from an outside point of view, what this does is it makes any character, and this will do it to any character, it'll make them more mysterious, basically. This is the reason why the Dumbledore, Gandalf, a lot of these characters seem so mysterious and distant and stuff, is because we don't know what their perspective is. Basically, we're showing it from the Padawan character, and they're looking up to this other character, and we don't really know what's going on. We don't know what's going on inside their head, what they're thinking, what their plans are, what they know, what they can do. All this is just a mystery. So what we imagine is much better. And bigger. Because if you're going to imagine something that's awesome, you usually will imagine something that's really, really awesome. And you kind of have the constraints of the characters introduced. So, okay, this character is not likely to be able to do that, but there's some limitations to the characters. But there's this idea of this mystery that's, kind of played from the outside. So if you basically want to instill kind of the same level of mystery, an easy way to do it is just have it told from an outside perspective. Someone who's normal, who's worried about normal things like school or something like that, is watching this guy just train for 12 hours a day to become the strongest person ever, or anything like that. It kind of makes sense and highlights them a little bit more from there. And it's pretty straightforward and pretty obvious that this is going to be coming into play. And so this is something that we kind of have to see from there. So here, what we got to decide from here, is how long to carry this as a different point of view, basically. We can kind of carry it for the entire story. Usually at some point you do have to drop it, or solo leveling does it pretty well, where they just continually cycle through it. You continually introduce new characters to have this outside point of view for it. But we'll see. So basically, for the plot-wise, though, the MC, he saves the girl, kills the bikers or kidnappers, or basically super popular rich girl, saves her. Ching. He seems all mysterious, and he doesn't stay behind, doesn't collect a reward, doesn't make himself known, because what's more important is the mystery. He's obsessively working towards this. And then what we find out from here is that, lo and behold, he gets hit by a bus. So wasn't stronger than a bus, apparently. And that's the end of the story. The credits roll. Credits roll, and seemingly that's the end. And it is kind of funny, they actually did play the credits there. But what they have from there is then the MC wakes up, and he is somehow magically or other. Again, it's one of those things where it doesn't really matter. And this is why I call it an isekai, basically. It's because plot. Because that's what happens next. That's the rule. And that's what kind of determines it. So MC is basically over here, and he is reborn as a child. And basically then this kind of establishes he's even more OP, basically, now, because he's born to this rich family. He's a child, so basically he's an adult with the mind of a child. With the mind of a child, and basically he can go through and then we find out later, because we fast forward to kind of him being some years old, He knows how to use magic, and this is kind of in episode 2, basically. Basically, we can see that he's being reborn, and that's kind of the end of the episode 1, and then we're entering episode 2, and we can see he's in this fantasy world, which is kind of a generic fantasy world. Let's see. And he's doing the same thing, where he's going by and killing bandits, basically, and it's very, very brutal, actually. He's kind of a psycho. He really seems to enjoy and not really mind killing people. It is interesting because I feel like the animes and mangas over time have gotten a lot more accustomed to blood and stuff, and having their main characters kill everyone. I think there was definitely more of an innocence and justice mind for some like the older school mangas and stuff. Stories like Naruto and One Piece and stuff, they would never ever just kill anyone. But in this one, he's running through and killing bandits like crazy. It's no chance. He's overpowered, basically. So there's no way that they can win. He goes through killing lots of them, blood everywhere. Blood everywhere, and it kind of goes in that direction. So we get to see that basically goes. He's basically also, the other main theme of this is that he wants to be a background character. And this is kind of where I don't really know. It didn't seem like a comedy at first, but it seems to be something that they're going for. So I don't know if it's something that they just kind of, he definitely seemed to be going for it. He just didn't do it very well in the first 2 episodes, I think. I think in the second one it came through a little bit more. The first one less so. But he wanted to be a background character, basically. So he doesn't want to be the protagonist. And he's I don't know how to spell protagonist, but we're going to fudge it together. There we go. Protagonist, he doesn't want to be that. He wants to be a side/background character. And he doesn't want to go into any more depth from there. And this is kind of the goal. And this is where we kind of enter the weird, very meta aspect of the story. So it's pretty odd in the sense that he's kind of aware of, he sees his own life as a story. Which is kind of builds into this overpowered, aloof mystery. Again, I'm only on episode 3, so this is kind of me. Some of this is going to include some assumptions, which I don't really have. But this is kind of the direction that they're going in from here. So basically, kind of very meta, and he's kind of trying to do stuff that a side character would do. You know, we got, let's see. We got what would Jesus do, and then we got what would a side character do. And of course, this is the one that he's interested in, he's going through. And so he's constantly trying to stay down. I will be honest, episode 2 kind of, I didn't really care for. I was getting ready to stop. I went ahead and continued. I think the main thing was then he rescues this girl. Her turns out to be some strange elf. There's one dynamic which I just don't get, and it's probably going to be explained later, or maybe I just missed it. Whatever he says seems to happen. That's what it seems to be. But then in episode 3, it seems to be less of that. So basically, he says there's a cult named after a liquor, I think it was. And then suddenly there he is. You know, he says there's the hideout. And it's obvious that it goes where he didn't intend it to go, the mark on this map, and it's there. You know, it's whatever he says, it happens. So this is kind of where it gets a little bit odd, and maybe, I'm assuming it'll get explained in some way, but this part was kind of weird, and I didn't really get it. He gets this elf and builds up a harem, which I thought this was kind of, I'm assuming the direction is probably going in there, but it was done in kind of a, okay, sure, buddy, way. And what I mean by that is it kind of feels like it's just playing into some sort of fantasy. It's like we're not really worried about telling the best story ever or anything like that, but basically it's just, this is just kind of like rom-coms are playing out someone's fantasy of being romanced in this way or something, or being able to romance someone. This is like just playing out someone's fantasy in terms of being surrounded by women. This is just the goal, which again, there's a lot of this in anime. I've watched enough to know that this is not exactly uncommon. It's just not quite my tempo. Basically, there's something I'm just aiming for a little bit something different. But basically, then at the end of episode 2, they poof and gone, and I was pretty pumped. I thought, okay, this is cool. This will be interesting now. Maybe this will get better. So they leave. I don't really remember the reason. It's not really important. I'm assuming maybe they'll come back. I kind of hope they don't. But basically this. And this kind of tones down a lot. The kind of whatever he says happens, basically. Which is kind of odd. Because basically that kind of makes him into God, basically, at this point. And it just, the story about God in an anime is just probably, it's not one I signed up to read or watch. So, so then the main character goes from school originally because he's a high schooler, and he goes to Dark Knight School, which is, again, it's an isekai. And this episode 3, we're kind of in now. Episode 3, and episode 3 kind of goes a bit more into the comedy. He goes very meta. The meta is turned up. We got meta, and by meta I mean he talks about himself again, and this idea that he's a background character. He's this kind of story. He's trying to be a background character. He's kind of trying to be the most mediocre and average person possible, which is interesting. That's kind of a neat way to do it, because basically this is one, you get a little bit meta with it, which is kind of I don't know, I enjoy it from there, but also the audience will see, basically you set your own goal, basically, and then you can kind of see how the main character achieves it. This is kind of what a basic building block of a plot. And usually the goal they're aiming for is on top of, shall we say, a mountain or something. It's a very high goal, so it's actually like this, and we're right here, and it's, going to take forever to achieve it. But you get to set this goal. This is the goal set by the author, or in generally it's also set by the character. So what does the character want? What does the character want? Does he want to be king of the world? Or does he want to be average? And it kind of adds this different element and different light to the story, the fact that he is just trying to be average. He's like, literally, all I want to be is a main character. I'm already better and I'm already above all this, but it doesn't really highlight that, which is very good, because that's incredibly arrogant and annoying. But basically, he's aiming for right here. He's aiming for this dot. And the reason why is because he's already achieved this. But basically, you have all the other characters then can do this typical journey, and it adds this contrast, basically. It's our main character. It's kind of like everyone else is studying for a really hard exam. And I'm talking study for days, stressed. And if you've already passed it. Past it. Something like where you just don't have a care in the world. You don't really care. But basically, you're constantly around people that are going towards and working towards this goal that just doesn't matter to you. And basically kind of sets off this kind of just calmness. You're just at ease, basically. You're just chilling. And so it kind of sets up a different tone for the story, as opposed to someone who's just one of, and again, there's nothing wrong with these different stories. These are different tactics and different ways to do it. So, this way is Naruto, essentially. He's down here. He's trying to learn how to do magic, awesome things, trying to save the kingdom. And he's constantly fighting against other people like Sasuke and all the other people in the Junin and Shonen exams. They're all moving up towards this. And so the question is, what happens from there? What happens at this point? And so basically, so he goes through dark training, and then he gets tricked into asking out the princess. And he's planning for it to be humiliating and average. And that's, again, it's you set your own goals. And this is kind of what this episode does really good. It's like, do you want the princess to be your girlfriend? Or do you want her to reject you. Oops. And this is us. We know which one are we aiming for. You know, we know which one is going to be more likely, but we're aiming for this one. So it's just like, heck yeah, we can watch our character succeed, because we like to watch our main character succeed, because the main character is kind of an avatar for us. And if he was wanting to get rejected, then hey, heck yeah, this is a win-win for everyone, because this is definitely what's going to be happening. So there's that. So yeah, so basically he asks the princess to go out, and for some reason she says yes. And then you kind of have this comedy aspect where he's going through and trying to figure out, he's trying to be kind of as big of a, give her plenty of reasons to break up with him. Or at least not, he's not trying very hard. I would say he doesn't really go up too hard on this direction. It's more, he's just, let's see. He's not trying. Which again, it kind of goes into this aloof thing, you know, what do you care about, basically? What do you care about? I misspelled that or butchered that pretty badly. Okay, so yeah, it's kind of like, what do you care about? What is so if you care about this, if you fail at something that you don't really care about, does the audience care? No. And so what it is basically anything that happens to the main character as the avatar, essentially, as the avatar, then eventually flows through and hits the audience. And so let's see, so when the main character's scared, when you have fear coming in, the fear transfers over there. When you have awkwardness or cringe, as is the kind of the modern way to put it, cringe, all this is going to hit the main character. So basically what we're doing is by aiming low, we're controlling this, you know, what the main character feels, which by byproduct controls what the audience is feeling. And this is how we do it. This is how basically you can come up with a story where there's essentially zero obstacles. Because if you think about it, he's overpowered. There are no obstacles. No obstacles for him. So what is the kind of the story about? So there's seemingly obstacles and kind of the stuff, but again, it depends. So he's overpowered, so we have to create a new goal, basically. So what is this goal that he's going to be working towards? What is this goal that he's actually going to try and achieve? Because being the best, if he's already the best, if he's already up here, basically, then going down is a bad story, because he's lowering himself. It's a tragedy, basically. We don't want to try it. I mean, maybe you do. Then it's a tragedy. But if you don't, this is what it is. What we'll need to do from here is basically we've got a new goal. And so what we've got to do is then see how he achieves it. Basically, his new goal is not to be the best. It's basically to be average. So let's see. To be average. And this is kind of the new goal. So he's setting up a new goal, and it kind of creates this, again, it's almost like a comedy atmosphere that they're going for. It's kind of odd. I didn't really expect it, but it kind of is working for episode 3. Episode 2 wasn't as interesting for it, or as it didn't pull as much for me. Episode 1 was kind of just odd, just because I wasn't really expecting it to kind of go this whole like isekai solo leveling, like then he dies in the middle of it sort of deal. It's kind of strange. But from here in episode 2, he's also much more of a psycho, basically. He's running around murdering people, which again, these people probably deserved it. However, it is kind of a psycho. He's probably going to go there, but I can kind of see if they go the direction where the main character is self-absorbed in this story main character narrative, then this is a good direction to go, I think. Makes it so you can make sure your character, self-absorbed people, you hate them, but you have to have something else to make you like them. So self-absorbed in this narrative, which kind of results in comedy, is a way to go back with it. He continually strives to be the main, to be a side character, but fails. This is kind of interesting. Because while he's failing at being average, and thus will become above average, and it's kind of interesting, especially if they reintroduce the romance or harem factor. I have a feeling that they're going to bring it back in. I kind of hope they don't, but I have a feeling they're going to. From there, this is kind of how you can make it work. So if they continue with this direction, I think this will make the story work, and it'll work pretty good. But yeah, okay, so I hope you guys enjoyed it and hope you learned this, and I may do some more on the Eminence and Shadow, just depending on if I watch more, kind of what I'm interested in, how it turns out. But I think it's interesting. It's caught my attention, so we'll see how it goes. But I hope you guys learned something, and I'll see you in the next one.